Good morning, afternoon, everybody. Sorry for the little delay. I was struggling to find the credentials to the streaming client, but thanks to the amazing admins of No Code Friends, I'm now in, and I'm able to start a little live stream. So today is a little like special, impromptu, unplanned live stream about Blobr. Um, and the way that happened is that I started to use that tool, which I'll go a little bit more detail on what that tool is. Started to use that tool a few days ago. Actually, I heard about it a month ago, and then I had the need for it a few weeks ago, and I asked the No Code Friends Slack if anybody remember that tool. So it was a French company who lets you do like API portals. And so I reached out, and someone mentioned Blobr, and that popped up again in my head, and I started to reuse it again, and it's been really, really good. It's been an amazing experience. I'll show you around. We're gonna do a little walkthrough, so I'm not gonna just stay conceptual about it. We're gonna be practical. Um, I just had a talk with I think two founders, or at least one founder, maybe two. Like anyway, folks at Blobr, and they gave me a little bit of an insight on what's coming up. Nothing particularly secret, but just exciting stuff. So I'm happy to talk about that as well. And with that said, I apologize for francophones, for people who only speak French. I was going to make, I know it's part of the No Code French community, so it's not great that I'm not doing it in French. I just reached out to a few folks on Twitter to see if there were people interested in a walkthrough of Blobr, and some English speaker people reached out, and so for that reason I'm doing it in English. Sorry. Who knows? I might do another one in French if it feels like it needs to be. Okay. I'm going to close up a few things, just give everybody a chance to join while I get set up here with my own personal setup. Give me one sec. I'm going to open the Blobr website. So today we're going to do, like I said, we're going to do a walkthrough, and we might do a little more than Blobr. So actually, let me get started. I apologize, by the way. I haven't been amazingly prepared for this, but you guys used to it. Feel free to ask any question you have about Blobr, my experience with Blobr, or anything I'm saying in the comment section as well. So let me share my screen and we can get started. We're going to share our, okay, great. Here we go. Okay, so this is, clean up a few things. Sorry, no, I'm taking a long time. Okay, here we go. I'm hoping you can see my screen not yet. Here we go. So this is Blobr. So I've already created an account. I encourage you to create an account. For those who don't know, I'm going to start very high level. Hi, Lynn, in the chat. Here's the use case. You have data, whether it's, the price of milk, the fluctuation of the price of milk in the US for the last 30 years, or the result of the French election for the legislative, whatever kind of like information you have that in a database, and you want to offer that to users. So one way to do it is to put a UI in front of it, like a website or web app, and people can consume that information visually online. Another way to do it is to offer that data through an API. So you're going to give people access to that data so they can do whatever they want with it, with their own UI and their own application and web app and all of that. So it's just creating like one step removed from the end user. So once you decide to do that, you then have the question of like, I need to create an API. Creating an API nowadays is, if you do it in code, there are a bunch of frameworks and tools out there. So it's pretty straightforward to do a REST API. If you don't want to code, there are a lot of like backend, no-code backends. So I often talk about Zeno, which is one of my personal favorite, but Airtable, that's exactly what Airtable is. It's a database that is in no code. You don't have to like code it, and Airtable by default offer an API for folks to connect to. So even though most people know Airtable for the UI, for the application that they see in their web browser, there is also an API. So I can connect to the Airtable API and do whatever I want with the data in my own website. So for example, I work at DriveBit, which is a tool to do mobile app, like iOS and Android mobile app, just the client part. But there are other tools like WeWeb, which lets you do kind of a web app, like a client of a web app. And so both those things can connect to Airtable through the API. So that's an example of where you will use the Airtable API. Okay, great. So now you have your backend, whether you did it yourself or you're using Xano Airtable. Both those scenarios, you have an API. Now you want to share that API to other folks and be like, all right, here it is, you can use it. But there's a few things that you always have to do. First of all, there is authentication and security. As you'll have more and more users, you want to be able to identify them, know who's using your API, what are they doing with it. You might want to put some limits to it as well. So not only a limit like per second, I want my user to be able to ping the API like 10 times a second, but also like at the upper bound, like I don't want them to use that specific endpoint more than like 1,000 times per day or whatever it is. So that's one. Everything that has to do around like the identification, the authentication of the user. Also more important, like not more importantly, but more excitingly, there is pricing. So if you want to offer that API at a price, not everything has to be free. If you want to say, you know what, that fluctuation of the price of milk in the US for the last 50 years, I want to be able to pay for that if they're interested enough to pay for that. So as a developer, I would have to write a lot of code and integrate with a lot of services to make sure that my user enter a credit card information, and then per each call, that costs them something. And then you have different pricing model, like do they pay per each call, or do they pay, like, is it like a tiered, like, for you get 50 calls for that price, like 1,000 calls for that price, and 5,000 calls for that price. Like all those challenges are difficult when you make an API. And I've run into that myself many times, building a lot of APIs in the past. And so that's exactly what Blobr helps you do. So assuming that you do have an existing API, which again can be just your Airtable, there'll be kind of an interface between your data, your backend, and your user. And they'll handle authentication, pricing, and even we're going to look into that a little bit more, like documentations, because that's a big thing when you offer an API to the world. You have to document it, explain to people this is how you use it, those are the fields you need to fill in, and so Blobr does a lot of that, and we're going to go into more detail on how that look. I scheduled an hour, so I'm going to go pretty quick, and I also won't go into too much detail, so I apologize for folks who don't know what an API or an endpoint are. It might be a little much, but hopefully there is value for the others. So very first thing we're going to do, I'm going to show you the end result. So I've created my own Blobr API portal. This is what the admin dashboard looks like. So you got getting started that kind of help you go through the onboarding process. It's very helpful. You got analytics telling you how much your users are using your endpoint, your API. But more importantly, what you're going to want to do is create, as you start, you need to create an API source. So you need to tell Blobr, all right, this is my existing API. Blobr, Xano, my own, whatever it is, but you need to you need to tell Blobr where to look. So that's what you're going to do here. And we'll see as we do it, there is some configuration. You have control of a lot of things there as well. And then once you've told Blobr where the data is, then you can create product, and product are like user-facing products. So what your client are going to see, and that's really what the value is with that proxy, is that you don't have to just surface the one-to-one of what your backend is. You can now hide some stuff, you can extend it with other stuff, like you can do a lot of massaging of the data or management of the data at the Blobr level before your user get to it, which is very convenient. So you see I have two products. One is old, I was just testing it, but this is the product I'm working on. It's called a time product. But before I click on it, I'm actually going to show you what it looks like from a user point of view. So this is me from like an admin point of view, but a user is going to see this, and this is essentially what you're going to share. What are you going to send to your user? Which, by the way, if you notice, there's like a custom domain feature. So I've actually hosted my API portal under a domain name that I own, which is chrono.com. So if you go to docs.chrono.com, you can see that exact same page, which is very convenient because it's also very clean, integrates nicely into whatever your company already does in terms of domain name. So this is one product. I can see a detail. I see that it's free. It doesn't have to be free. I could have had a pricing model. I'm actually doing that right now. This is very much a work in progress. I mean, like my product is a work in progress, not so much Blobr. You can see there's 10 endpoints, and there's a limit on how many calls I can make. I set that up myself. You can do whatever you want. So this is what it looks like now that I've subscribed to that product as a end user. I see an overview of it, just giving me some like high-level dashboard and metrics. It tells me how I can connect to that product. So again, the end user can just use that URL and use that API key, which I'm going to change after this video, and connect to my database. And so that's essentially all your user need to know. And then they need to look at a little bit of documentation to understand everything they can do with your API. So mine looks like this. As a little side note, what this product is about is, for those who know cron, or every kind of tools that you might have used in the past that lets you trigger a specific event at specific times. So if you use Integromat or Make or Zapier, typically at the beginning of an automation, you have to set up when you want that automation to be triggered. And so you will typically say, all right, every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Or like I want it to be executed every 15 minutes. So there's that, and then you have a whole like a workflow, like a whole scenario, right? But that part to specify when you want to trigger a specific job, that's what I've been abstracting away from Zapier and Make, and putting in its own API. So now, and also it goes beyond just like every 10 minutes. So you can see here, I have a way to do every. It's jobs/time/every. So you can say every 5 minutes, make that request, make a post request to your Integromat or your Zapier. There's also a after. So after 10 minutes, so that's only going to run once. You're going to do something. There's a date time and a timestamp, which is a way to say at a specific point in time, like on March 20, 2024 at 4 p.m. you want to execute something, so you can do that here. And finally, you also have a cron tab. So for people who are more technical, the way we typically do those scheduled job in code is through a cron tab expression. So it's a little odd, but maybe I can show you. Cron Guru. It looks something like this. It's weird, like 5 symbol one after the other, and that's all you need to represent pretty much every single point in time. So if you want to say I want it every first Tuesday of January for the next 5 years, like you can do all those kind of things with cron. So it's very, very flexible. It's a little hard to understand, but it gives you a lot of power. So you have the ability to do that with the API that I provided here. Now you can also obviously, like at any given time, figure out like what jobs you have running, and you can figure out when they ran and whether they're successful or not. And all that's going to do is then trigger a post or get or patch request to whatever service you want. So it's not handling any of the, like, what do I do after the trigger? It's only handling the trigger. So you're really just replacing that first bubble in your make and give you more flexibility, more power. So right now, I talked a lot about like time-based, every Friday or after 5 minutes, things like that. But you can imagine slightly more event-based. So you can say, I'm planning on making a specific Blobr product for weather, for example. And you can say, if I'm in Massachusetts and it's that specific zip code and the temperature goes under 72, then trigger an event. or if if it's running in San Francisco, trigger an event. And again, you do whatever you want with that trigger. It can go to your own backend, can go to Integromat, whatever. But you're starting to see the value is that you can be, because it's programmatic like that, you can be specific to each user. So when you run a promotion and you do like you try to get leads or stuff like that, you don't have to send the same email to everybody at the same time. And that's typically what happens right now, right? Every Monday morning you get an 8 a.m. email. It's the same time for everybody, at least on a specific time zone. But what if programmatically you could say, okay, that specific user, they never read the email at that time, so I'm gonna just not have the same cron job, the same task for everybody. I'm gonna have an individual task for individual user. Now, if you were to do that manually, that would be insane. You can't do that. But because it's programmatic, you can just put one line in your application and do that much more easily. So that's kind of a little bit of where it's going. So weather is one, and then sport events like a game between two teams just finished, or like the result of an election, or the stock market is a good example too. What if the Tesla stock goes under a certain price? Send me a trigger when that happens. So everything that is a way to know that something has happened and now I want to do something else. So that's what that API is for. Okay, it's a long side note. It doesn't really matter what the API is for. This is just my personal use case. Blobr lets you do whatever you want. Like I said, it could be the fluctuation of the price of milk. So really, it's not opinionated about what you do with it. But anyway, so let's get started. Let's do an example. You know what? So I'm a big fan of Xano myself. I've mentioned that many times. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. This is my Xano. So Xano is a no-code backend. So you don't have to code your backend. You have to code your database, your endpoints, and all that. It's done for you. So here, I'm going to create a new example. We're going to call it milk. Right? All right. And it's going to be the price of milk. It's just a silly example, but you get the idea. So one is going to be price, and one is going to be a date, timestamp. Here we go. Date, price and date, and that should be enough. Right? So let's say we're going to do in 2000. Oh, you know what? Can I just do... Oh, yeah. Here's what we're going to do. We're not going to be as granular as the timestamp because we don't need that granularity. We don't need the time aspect. We just want a date. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. So here on January 2000, the price of the milk was, I don't know, $3. I'm not talking about the unit, so it doesn't really matter what the price is here. And then it was 3.5 in 2002, same thing, January. You could just probably just use a single integer and just remember the year. You know what I mean? That's probably an easier way. Instead of date, we can do this. Yeah, all right. Taking a few iterations, but okay. And I can remove this. All right, so I have my database. That's all I have right now is a database. And that could be, again, your Airtable, just a bunch of fields and data. And then I'm going to expose an API to that. So right now it's here. Yeah, I'm going to put it somewhere else because I don't want to mess up with my existing project. So bear with me for just 1 sec. We're going to remove those. We're going to create a new API group that we're going to call milk. Okay, here it is. And so we're going to add API endpoint from the milk table, and Xano, let's kind of do that automatically for you. So that's it. I now have an endpoint to get milk. We can try it. Let's see what it looks like. It returns just the price of milk. That's it. And so that's just bare minimum. We have a database and an endpoint. Now we can move to Blobr. So on the Blobr side, I'm going to go back to the admin part of it. I'm going to create a new API source. Here it is. I'm going to call it milk. It's going to be v1.0. By the way, quick side note, if you always wonder what version to use when you start something, I highly recommend, how's it called? semantic versioning, which is just kind of a proposal on how to version things. And one of the interesting recommendation is to, the simplest thing to do is to start your initial development with it release at 0.1.0 and then increment the minor. So that's always what I do, start from 0.1.0. Like it's a good recommendation because you don't want to, if you start at 1 point something, it means it's already kind of something that is kind of more stable than it is. So anyway, it really doesn't matter. You can give it whatever name. Okay, so here it is, step 2. And by the way, you see there are videos, there's chat. I've been chatting to Alexandre and Mathilde, who have been amazingly supportive, and they respond in minutes at any time of the day. So amazing support so far, really appreciate it. Like I said, we had a call this morning. So those guys are really, those folks are really into it, are really on top of things. So anyway, here, there are 2 ways you can tell Blobr about the API that you have. You can do it automatically through an Swagger file, also known as an Open API file. Those are kind of interchangeable terms. And so essentially, it's a configuration file, it's a YAML file that just describes your API. And so you probably get that from your backend. So if you do, just use that and give that to Blobr. That way Blobr already knows everything about your API. Most everything. You'll see there's a few things we have the option to tweak, but it'll get you started much faster. If you don't have that, you can also do it all manually and tell, like, you know, endpoint per endpoint, like what things look like. So it's a little bit more manual, but you get to the same result. I like to use the automated version. So back to my Xano backend, there is here a Swagger documentation. So if I'm going to click on it, this is kind of its own interface. But if I look here, the API spec link, if you click on it, you'll see here, that's the YAML file, that's a configuration file that I'm talking about, that describe your endpoint. So this is the path, this is what it's expecting, and blah, blah, blah. In my case, it's very straightforward. There's not a lot of like input to the API, so it's very straightforward, but still. So what we're gonna do is, you might not see that on the screen recording, but I'm gonna just save that file. I'm gonna call it milk 0.1.0 and .yaml. Okay. Excuse me. And now I can go back to Blobr and I can say, yes, I do have an API file. I'm going to check that and then I can upload it. Again, you might not see that part, but it's just opening the file browser on my machine. I'm going to pick the right one and that's it. And now it's uploaded. That's it. I'm going to continue, and you know, you already understood the endpoint. So if I continue, so and again, everything I'm describing here is documented in way more detail in the video and the blurb and the customer support. So you're not going to be lost. But this step is interesting. So these steps ask you if, like, how do you want Blobr to communicate with your API? Is there some kind of authentication that need to happen? So if your API as like private stuff that require, you know, an API key or a bearer token or an OAuth, like flow of authentication, you can tell it to Blobr, because you really want Blobr to be able to contact that API, right? You don't want Blobr to be blocked or not able to access it. So you got to tell it how to do it. And like I said, it can be a bearer token specified here. It can be just an API key. And so that's what Blobr is going to use. But to be clear, this is Blobr talking to your backend, right? In my case, there's no, you know, everybody can actually use that. We can even maybe demonstrate it. So if I take just a link for my Xano and I say milk, that's it, right? It's open. There is no authentication. I didn't have to answer any API key or anything like that. It's just this accessible link. You guys can even access it if you see that video, you can access the same link and get the same results. So in my specific case, there is no authentication. So I'm going to say no auth, but just know that it exists. Actually, very clever and you know, well thought out that they have that option. So I'm going to continue with no auth. And so here's a summary. I've got my API, it has a version, a name, it says a definition, there is a base URL that goes to Xano that my end users are not going to see, by the way, which is kind of the value of it, is that Blobr is really a proxy. So nobody needs to know I'm using Xano or Airtable. Particularly if you connect a custom domain to it, it can look very professional. Nobody knows what you're using for your backend. You only have you're only exposing user to your Blobr, and so there's only one endpoint, just milk, not a ton. You could have as many as you want, as far as I know. Typically, you will have a get, a post if you want user to be able to like post things to your backend. Maybe a patch to edit it or delete, remove it, whatever it is that you want to let user do. It will be an endpoint like this. And now I'm going to add the API source. All right, let's give it a sec. Okay, so now here it is. There's my new API source. And so again, that's me, that's Blobr talking to my backend. Now I really need to take care of the other end of the equation, which is from Blobr to my end user. And for that, it's not API source anymore, it's a product. So I can create as many products as I want, even if I just have one API source. So I can create a product for the more like for the developers, as for different personas of end user, like developers, maybe marketing folks, business folks, like whatever. They have different needs, different use case. So you can really tailor your product, the product that you create in Blobr, to the different end user, even though you might have just one unique API source. So from an internal point of view, from like a company point of view, you know, you have usually limited resources in terms of engineering, so you can make them work on just one API. And then you, a product person, can like create as many products for your end user as you want, which is a big added value of Blobr. All right, so I'm gonna create a new product. We're gonna do it live. So I'm gonna call it Milk. The price. The fluctuation of the price of milk in the US over the last 50 years, whatever it is, you know, whatever your description is. And now I'm going to tell the product which source to use. So we're going to use the milk source that we just created. We're going to expose all the endpoint, and that's what I meant earlier. Like, you know, you could expose just one and not the others. You can also, if you have different query parameters, mine does not really have any input or query parameter, so I can't really do that, but you could add some restriction for that specific product, and a different product will not have those restrictions. That's how you kind of tailor to your audience a little bit more. You can filter the response. So that's what you're going to send back to your end user. You can say, send everything, or maybe, you know, don't share with them the ID. That's kind of a internal thing. I don't want them to know the ID. So really, you have that flexibility here. I'm going to continue. And now that's interesting. So you can select a pricing model. And the very default one is easy. It's like, all right, make it free. But you can have just a flat fee. So the person pays, you know, $10, and now they can use your API. Done. Fixed price. It can be per unit. So you say, all right, every time you use that endpoint, every time you make a request, it's going to cost you 2 cents, whatever it is. Or you can have it tiered, you know, for your first 500 calls, it's a certain price. If you go above 2,000 calls, it's another one, and above that is the third price. So you can really break it down. To be able to do that, you need to integrate with Stripe, which I haven't done it myself. I ran into a little bit of an issue, so I'm going to try to do that. I won't do it live because there's a lot of, not so much that there's a lot involved, but it's touching my Stripe account, so I don't know if I should attempt to do that live, but it's definitely possible. So once you connect to your Stripe account, from what I understand, it's a little side note, but it's done in a way that Blobr is going to create, again, I haven't tried it myself, but from what I understand, it's going to create a Stripe managed account, a product in Stripe for you. So you don't have to share your Stripe credential with Blobr and things like that. So it seems to be a little clever in that way. I'll report back once I use it. So for now, we're just going to start with the free plan because that's the one you don't need any Stripe connection because it's free. One very cool thing to note is that you can specify the unit. So the default one is going to be every time the person makes a call, which is a request to your backend, that's 1. So if you say it's, if you were in the flat fee, or if you were in the per unit, if you say like every call is $5, that's $5, $10, 15, 20, blah, blah, blah. But that doesn't address all the use cases. Sometimes you don't want to count how much the user have used your API based on the number of requests. Sometimes it's something else. And I'll give you an example. So in my case, because if you guys remember, I'm doing kind of a time-based job scheduling. So you tell my API, every Tuesday, I want to trigger something in Zapier. Right? That's what the user set up. So that's one call. But really what I want them to pay me for is not that setting up that one trigger. It's really every Tuesday, because every Tuesday I want that to count like 2 cents, 4 cents, 6 cents. Because imagine if your users say like every 2 minutes, you send me something in Zapier. It's going to be like thousands of calls for me very quickly. So I want them to pay on that and not so much on the trigger is just one trigger. Whether you say every 2 minutes or every 5 years, it's just one trigger. So it's not a good unit of measure for me in terms of pricing. What I'd rather have them do is I want to create kind of a custom unit that I can call like execution. I'm going to save that, and then it's really cool because when you do that, it'll happen a little bit later. But then Blobr gives you an endpoint that I can ping and say, yes, my user used 1 unit. So essentially, in my case, every time the cron job kind of execute, I'm pinging Blobr to say +1, +1, +1. It's like a meter. So that's how I'm counting, and that's how I'm calculating how much the user needs to pay. So it's not for everybody. It's kind of a specific use case, but it's kind of cool that I have this very neat myself, and that was already something that was taken, that was possible to do in Blobr. For now, we're going to keep it very simple. We're going to say every time I make a request, it counts as 1 call. Okay. Limit per month, yeah, sure, don't use it more than 1,000 times, and maybe don't use it more than 10 times per second because it's going to overload my server, whatever it is. You can set that up, you don't have to. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, and then you can create some workflow. So that's another thing that I haven't done it myself, but because I don't really have a need for it just yet. But let's say your API has really like multiple steps. For example, like step 1, get an ID to identify yourself. Step 2, create an account. Now that you have an account ID. Step 3, create a new team member. Okay, now I've got a team member. And now step 4, for that team member, give them specific privileges. Like whatever flow that require multiple kind of calling multiple endpoints one after the other, you can in Blobr specify a workflow in the step 1 and provide some documentation, step 2 some documentation. So that too is a little bit of a specific not edge case but use case that I don't have myself, so I'm just typically skipping that, but just know that it exists if that's something you need. And now I'm going to make it public because it's just a test. This is kind of the summary. I'm going to add the product. And here it is, product added. That's all my information. And so that's me again as an admin. But if I go back to the API portal, now I should see a third product in my catalog. So I have my deprecated time product, I have my current time product, and I have this milk product, which has 1 endpoint, a limit of 1,000 calls. It's free for now. I can look at it. This is me doing the preview. It'll remind me of the limitation. It'll show me the endpoint. If I click on it, I can actually have this whole UI to see what it's going to look like, what the response is going to look like, and I have even an example. So let's try it out. If I click here, it's going to try to run that. Oh, I can try it out. I assume there's a little bit of a visual issue here, but I assume, yeah, you must subscribe to try it out. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Remember, we're here, the product catalog. I can subscribe. And then once I'm subscribed to it, it takes just a second, I'll be able to show you and to try it out. So this is now that I have a subscription. This is kind of my usage of the subscription. This is how I'm going to authenticate to it, which I'm going to go back to in a minute. But more importantly, so this is my endpoint, and I can try it out here. So it's going to run this, and you know, that's it. I got the milk. This is the response I got. So the first one is the year 2000. It was €3, $3. Year 2001, it was 35 euros. And again, I made it free, but you could have people pay you if you have interesting information enough that people are willing to pay for. Okay, so this is great, and this is just to cancel my subscription if I wanted to. Now, your users, they're not going to use the Blobr portal to make those calls, right? They're going to use either their own application, or like I said, like Zapier or Integromat or stuff like that. So I'm going to try illustrate what that looks like if I stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to share a different screen for 1 sec. I'm going to try to show you what it looks like with an API client. So right now I'm loading an API client. Let's see if I can share that. Oh, if I can share that on the screen as well. Window, okay, Insomnia. I use Insomnia. It's like Postman or stuff like that. It's all similar tools. Can you see it now? Okay, here it is. So I'm going to create a request collection. Actually, I'll do even one better. When you use, I'm not going to go back to that, but when you use Blobr, that lets you download your API file. The same thing we did to communicate, to like give a definition of the API from Xano to Blobr. You can do from Blobr to your end user. So I'm gonna download that file that Blobr made for me. Here we go, and then I can use it in my API client, which is very powerful. So we're gonna import file. Here we go. How was it called? Milk underscore definition. Okay. And so now new request creation, and that's it. Here it is. So that's Insomnia. It could be Postman, it could be whatever API client you're using. But I've imported the OpenAPI file from Blobr, so I didn't have to enter any information, and here it is. So this is what the endpoint looks like. Again, I only have one, but I could have 15 of those. And I need to do a couple of stuff because that's not going to work right away, right? Right now, I can't access that resource. What I do need to do, I should probably just share my entire screen because I'm going to go between different. So I'm going to share my entire screen. That'd be easier. Okay. Gonna have a little bit of. Okay. I'm going to assume you can see that. So I need to tell Blobr, I need to identify myself as a subscriber of that product. I need to tell Blobr. So what I do is that I take that Blobr key ID and I'm going to put it as a header here. Oops, sorry. I'm going to copy that, paste it here. So that's it. Now I've identified myself. That should be good enough. Little internal server error, always fun. What did I miss? Let's find out. Get milk. Let's see, let me see if maybe, I'm gonna milk. No. Okay, let's keep trying. Blobr key. I've done it before, so I know it works, but I don't know what I'm messing up right now. All right, it's a little odd. I'm not sure. Oh, no, I don't know. Oh, yeah, no. Keep thinking and making a mistake, but so see, this one works. So I do believe, oops, sorry for that. I do believe this should be working. What am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? The user, this is my API key. Maybe if I try the other API key, maybe that one is just broken. No, it's other, there is no auth, there is no body. I'm just getting the price of that milk. Maybe what's that content application header thing? Maybe it's required content type. I doubt it, but was it application? Actually, it's not even that because it's not a, yeah. Okay, well, I'm running into a little bit of an error here. Maybe if my good friend from Blobr in the chat, they can tell me if I'm doing something wrong. Otherwise, we can keep going because I've made that work in the past, so I can continue that example. Yeah, so that works well. Let's see, deploy the API source, okay. Content, no, that's okay. API source should be fine, that's the latest. I'm trying to find what I'm doing wrong. So that should be it. Yeah, that works. No auth, list of the endpoint. Milk. Okay. Yeah, I'm really not sure what I'm doing wrong here. Well, I'm going to leave that alone for a moment, but I'm going to show you an example of when it works, and I'll try to figure out what happened here, because I don't have a lot of ideas of where to look at to solve it. So anyway, you see, I have this, I'm going to use the example of this one, which has a lot more endpoint and code. So if I see the detail of that, you can now see in the endpoints, I've got a lot more. So when I imported that, which by the way is this is how you download the API, Open API file. When I downloaded that into my API client, this is what it looks like. So I have all those calls. So this is kind of in practical term, what I was saying is now base URL is going to Blobr, not Xano anymore. So this is me just talking to Blobr and Blobr talking to Xano. So I can tell, for example, in my after case, so I can give it a name and I say every 2 minutes or every 5 minutes. Here we go. Every 5 minutes, you're going to post something to Zapier.com. You know what I mean? Whatever you want that, you need that to be. So this is what you'll typically do. Send that around. And then that's it. Something came back. It created a UID, created this timestamp. The next one is going to be at this timestamp, and you're going to keep on doing that. And from a backend point of view now, on the Xano side, you can see that I have my jobs, and the one we just created is here. So every 5 minutes it's going to run. This is when it was created, which is a minute ago, not even. Next run is going to be in 4 minutes from now, so it makes sense because it's every 4 minutes, every 5 minutes, and then there will be a last run after it's run once, and it's going to keep on going, and it's going to trigger the Zapier API, and I can do whatever I want with it, send an email, do something in my database, whatever I wish to do. So that's an example. That endpoint comes from this Blobr product. I'm showing it to you to prove that it works, and works very well. And that's it. I think that gives an idea of the tour. Sometimes you can have query parameter required, but overall, so the couple of things that I didn't do that I'm going to explore next are the integration with Stripe. So right now, all my API are free, and I want to experiment with connecting probably a per unit or a tiered pricing. Hey, Lionel, I see you in the chat. So I'm going to experiment with Stripe. What else I'm going to do? Oh yeah, there's something exciting coming. I hope I'm allowed to share that. I think I am. Is right now those products, I have a little bit of information, but like not a ton, right? I only have like this one line. And so the Blobr team is working on giving you the ability to create a lot more documentation. So a little text and like a video and images and stuff like that. You can really show what the application is about. Because I would say that the use case for that is that right now, I don't know if I would give someone just this link. My end user, when they arrive just here, it's very well designed and looks very good. But in terms of like introducing them to what Chrono in my case does, it's a little bit abrupt. So what I do so far is I drop them in Chrono, and then I haven't done it, but I'll put some information here, and then eventually when they're ready to use it, they can go to the Blobr catalog. But what Blobr is doing is they're going to give me that ability to do an intro and a video and all that inside the platform. So that way, I don't even have to do that homepage. I can just put it all in there, and it'll be much clearer for my end user. So I'm excited to see that happening. That'd be a very nice update. And that's it, I think. Let me see. Is there anything else I wanted to cover? So we use Xano for backend. We took the OpenAPI file from Xano, put in Blobr. That way we had an entire API source. Then we created one product. We could create as many as we want in Blobr to access that. And then we use that OpenAPI file to put in an API client to make the call. We did run into a little bit of an issue with a specific product run into an error, but I showed that other product I was able to use without any problem. For the more technical folks, just know, because that's something I run into. So when Blobr talks to your backend, it's going to send a few headers. It's going to send the equivalent of the user ID, the subscription ID, and the product ID. And so on your backend, you want to save the information probably. So in my case, I don't want, when someone requests a job, I want to remember who it is, because when someone later on come and say, what are all my jobs? I want to be able to only return the job for that person. So I need to know who it is. So I'm using the header that Blobr is sending to my backend to identify who is coming from and all of that. So it's a small thing, but it's very key. You need that. And so it's good to know that if you're looking for it, it's in the header. One thing I didn't mention, but they also do have a good documentation. So if you go to, I think it's docs.blobr.com, I can share it here. It'll be, you'll have access to all the documentation. And there's one other thing I wanted to mention. I forgot. What was I? Anyway, I'll take Lynn's question. How are users paying to use the API? Do they have to sign up to Blobr? So they will arrive. Into that portal that looks like with all your 1, 2, 3 or whatever product, and then they'll make an account there. So in a way, yes, they have to sign up to Blobr, but they kind of signing up to Blobr with the intent of using your application. And in my case, I don't need them to authenticate to my product. It's actually, it's a feature more than a bug. Like, I'm happy having Blobr handling all the authentication flow, reset password and blah, 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 and API keys and regenerate API keys. And oops, I shared it in a video I should not have. I want to regenerate it. Like all those kind of stuff. Blobr does it all and just send me the unique kind of information about the user. So in my personal case, I might not apply to everybody, but I was more than happy to not have to do that. As a matter of fact, that was one of my requirements. I did not want to do user authentication. So the user sign up for my API through Blogger. And for me, it's completely transparent. I don't have to do any of that. I'm just getting information about a user, which is very convenient. So I hope that answers your question. There's one more thing I forgot to mention. I think it's the founder of Blobr shared with me that video. It's a YouTube video on him, I believe, I haven't had time to watch it. It happened 2 minutes before this live stream, but of him connecting Airtable to Blobr. So I did it with Xano, but you can do it with Airtable. Works the same. I originally thought I would do that because for most no coders, it's actually even easier because everybody knows Airtable. It's easy to add data and then take that, put it in Blobr, and then make people pay for it through the API. So it's a very amazing flow. Think of it, in like a few minutes, you create a bunch of data in Airtable that is valuable, hopefully, and then you can put this kind of API proxy, you can start to charge for it. The reason I didn't do it today is because apparently Airtable does not give you an open API file. So there is not an automatic way to take it from Airtable and put it in Blobr and everything is already configured. You can still do it, but you have to do it manually. So you have to look at Airtable, look at the example, and then copy paste and like create your endpoints in Blobr one by one, which is very doable. Honestly, it's not that long, depending on how much fields and things you have, but it's doable. I just wanted to show the kind of automated happy path, approach. That's why I use Xano. But I encourage you to look at the video. I'm going to do the same right after. And that's it. There's a bunch of stuff. Like I said, I was talking to some of them. So there's a bunch of exciting stuff beyond the documentation description thing that I already talked about. There is a lot more coming over the next few weeks. So definitely keep an eye on them. They seem very active in putting out a lot of new features. So I'm going to keep an eye on them. I'm going to keep working on that chrono. If you're interested into that specific API, so I would recommend that you check out Blobr for whatever your needs are. If you're interested in what I've built, which is that time-based job scheduler to trigger like jobs and things like that by being able to say every 5 minutes or after 2 hours on that specific date or every first Monday of January, blah, blah, blah. If you're interested in that to power your Zapier or make automation, check chrono.com. Right now it's in development, so there's not a lot of doc, but you can follow me on Twitter. There is my username in the video here. It's at gduverger. So I'll be posting as soon as I update things on that platform, and as soon as it's ready for people to use. It's pretty much ready. So if you feel like being a pioneer, you can always take a look and subscribe. It's all free for now because it's in progress, but it won't stay free. So maybe a good time to try it out. And that's it. With that said, I appreciate your time. Sorry I started a little bit late, but thank you to the whole community of no-code friends for letting me do this little impromptu wild live stream, and to the team at Blobr, who again has been amazing at customer support and all of that. So really appreciate what you guys are doing, and I'll see you next time. Bye, folks.